The summer heat clung heavy over the small town of Harrow's End, pressing into the cracked sidewalks and sagging porches like a fever that refused to break. Folks said nothing ever changed here. The same faces of the diner, the same rusting trucks lined up outside Miller's Feed Supply. But when Deputy Caleb Rourke's K-9 partner began digging at the edge of the abandoned Wyatt farm, a memory long buried clawed its way to the surface. A missing girl, a family torn apart, and a secret the town had tried too hard to forget. If stories like this grip you, stay with me. There's more than one truth hidden in the dirt. The field was nothing but weeds and dust now, but Caleb remembered when it was alive with rows of corn. The Wyatt farm had been empty since the foreclosure 10 years ago, the old house collapsing on itself like a tired lung. "Easy, Scout," Caleb muttered, tugging gently at the leash. The German shepherd had locked onto something near the rotted fence posts, claws throwing dirt in frantic bursts. His ears were sharp, tail rigid, body tense with purpose. Caleb crouched, sweat sliding down the back of his neck. The dog rarely got like this outside of training. His instincts weren't wrong. "What you got, boy?" Caleb asked quietly, though the wind already carried the answer, an odor, faint but undeniable, earth mixed with something sour, something that made the stomach churn. The radio crackled on his shoulder. "Rourke, you gonna be all day out there, or should I start taking bets you're just teaching that much new tricks?" Sheriff Donnelly's voice, dry, dismissive. Caleb thumbed the receiver. "Scout's onto something. You might want to come take a look." A pause. Static filled the silence before Donnelly replied. "Last thing we need is you stirring up ghosts on that land. Close it down and head back." Caleb hesitated, jaw tightening. He'd been around long enough to know when the sheriff wanted something buried, figuratively or not. But Scout kept digging, faster now, growls rumbling low. Caleb unclipped the leash. "Show me." The shepherd lunged, paws tearing at the soil until his nails scraped against wood. Not a tree root, not stone. Wood. Caleb's breath caught. He brushed dirt aside with his hands until the outline revealed itself. A wooden box, weathered, small enough to carry. He froze. The memory of the girl's face came unbidden. Bright eyes, freckles, the posters that had once been stapled to every light pole. Lily Tanner, missing at 16. A decade gone. The box's lid shifted under his grip. He forced it open. Inside was no body, no remains. Instead, he found a collection of belongings, Lily's belongings. A charm bracelet, a tattered notebook, pages warped from damp, a pair of ballet slippers, frayed at the toes. Scout whined, paw resting on the edge of the box as though guarding it. Caleb swallowed hard. This wasn't a grave. It was a message. The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, headlights cutting across the overgrown field. Donnelly stepped out slow. Like a man arriving at a poker table he already knew the hand to. "Tell me you didn't open it." Caleb kept his eyes steady. "It's evidence. It's trash." Donnelly crouched, flicking a finger over the notebook without bothering to open it. "Kids leave junk everywhere. You're making it bigger than it is." "Sheriff." Donnelly's voice sharpened. "I said bury it. And if you know what's good for you, Rourke, you'll keep your dog on a tighter leash." The weight of the words landed heavier than the box itself. Caleb had served under Donnelly for 5 years, long enough to know threats when he heard them. Still, when he looked down at Scout, the dog's amber eyes burned with a certainty Caleb couldn't ignore. Something about this was wrong. That night, back at his modest house on Ash Street, Caleb spread the box's contents on his kitchen table. Scout lay at his feet, ears twitching every time Caleb touched the notebook. He flipped it open. The handwriting was hurried, uneven. He says not to tell anyone. He says if I keep quiet, I'll be safe. But I don't feel safe. Not here. Not with him. Caleb's pulse hammered. The entry stretched for weeks, sometimes written in jagged letters, sometimes smudged what looked like tears. "I saw him bury something by the fence. He said it was just trash, but I think he lied. If anyone finds this, know I tried. Please don't let him find me." A knock at the door made him jolt. Midnight. Too late for neighbors. Scout was already up, body rigid, growl vibrating low in his chest. Caleb reached for his sidearm. Who's there? Silence. Another knock, slower, heavier. When he pulled the door open, no one stood on the porch. Just the sound of cicadas humming and the rustle of leaves in the dark. But on the doormat lay a single photograph, weathered and curling at the edges. It was Lily Tanner, and scrawled across the bottom in red marker, "You should have stayed out of it." The photograph sat under the dull light of the kitchen lamp like a curse. Caleb hadn't touched it yet, though his eyes were locked on Lily's freckled face, frozen in time, smiling as if she had no idea the world would turn cruel. Scout's nails clicked against the tile as he circled, restless. The dog whined, sniffing the photo, then growled, ears pinned back. Caleb slipped the picture into a plastic evidence sleeve, his hands shaking despite years of keeping steady under worse circumstances. Domestic standoffs, meth lab raids, even the night he had to pull a gun on a man he once called a friend. But this felt different, more personal. He looked at the clock. 12:43 a.m. He wouldn't sleep, not now. Instead, he sat back down at the table and opened Lily's notebook again, scanning through pages of teenage handwriting that shifted from dreamy sketches of ballet stages to frantic scrawls about him. No name, no clear identity. Just him, a secret that still reached out from the grave. By morning, the town of Harrow's End wore its usual mask of quiet. The diner clanged with the sound of spoons and coffee mugs, the same farmers in the same ball caps, voices blending into a hum of gossip. But the way they went silent when Caleb pushed through the door told him all he needed to know. Something was already moving through the grapevine. He slid into a booth across from June Mather, a reporter for the Harrow Gazette, and his closest thing to a friend outside a Scout. June's pen paused mid-scribble over her notepad. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, taking in his unshaven jaw and the tension in his shoulders. "Didn't." He leaned in. "You still chasing Tanner stories?" Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" Caleb glanced around the diner, then lowered his voice. "I found something. Belongings. A notebook." June's knuckles whitened around her coffee cup. "Where?" "The Wyatt farm." That silenced her. For a long moment, only the hiss of the griddle filled the air. Finally, she said, "You know what you're playing with, don't you?" Caleb frowned. "I'm after the truth." "You're after Donnelly's noose." She leaned closer. "Half this town's been scared of the sheriff since before you wore that badge. If Lily wrote something pointing toward him, I didn't say his name was in it. You didn't have to." Their eyes locked. The weight of it pressed Caleb's chest, because June wasn't wrong. The bell over the diner door jingled. Sheriff Donnelly walked in, hat tilted low, eyes sweeping the room. Conversations died. His gaze landed on Caleb. "Deputy?" Caleb stood. "Sheriff." Donnelly's jaw worked as if grinding stone. "Got a call from the county. Said you were poking around a Wyatt property after I told you to clear it." Caleb kept his tone even. "Scout found evidence." "You found trash." Donnelly's voice was low, dangerous. "And if I hear you're sharing fairy tales with the Gazette, I'll see to it you're wearing a security vest at the mall, not my star." A hush stretched across the diner. June held Caleb's gaze, silently daring him not to back down. But Caleb forced his jaw tight, nodding. Understood. The sheriff lingered one beat too long, then turned and left. The chatter picked up again, brittle and forced. June exhaled. "That man smells blood on you." Caleb sat heavily, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, but I'm not the one bleeding yet." Back at his house that evening, Caleb laid out the notebook again, flipping through to an entry dated August 14th, 10 years ago. "He promised me no one would find out. He said if I disappeared for a while, everything would be better. But I saw what he buried. I think it was hers. The smell, God, the smell. If I'm next, maybe this will tell someone the truth." Scout shifted suddenly, ears pricking. His growl came before the sound, the crunch of footsteps outside. Caleb's hand went instinctively to his sidearm. He moved to the window, careful with his shadow, and peered through the blinds. A figure lingered by his truck, face hidden by a hood. The man, or boy, maybe, ran a hand over the hood surface, then slipped something under the windshield wiper. By the time Caleb threw open the front door, the figure was gone, swallowed by the dark. The note was a single sheet of lined paper, torn from a notebook. It read, "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." Pinned to the paper was a bracelet, a simple silver chain with tiny charms. The same bracelet he'd just found in Lily's box the night before, except this one was spotless. New. Caleb drove to June's place past midnight. Scout in the passenger seat, head out the window. June lived above the old post office, in a small apartment that smelled faintly of ink and old paper. She opened the door bleary-eyed but alert when she saw his face. "You're pale as hell. What happened?" He laid the note and bracelet on her kitchen table, her lips pressed in. "That's a warning. Somebody planted it, which means they've been inside the evidence." "Or you got a leak," she said softly. Caleb met her gaze. The implication was clear. Someone close. Someone in uniform. June folded her arms, thinking. "You realize what this means, don't you? Lily wasn't just a runaway. Someone kept her quiet. Someone still wants her story buried." Caleb exhaled sharply, pacing the small kitchen. "If I don't push, she stays a ghost. If I do, I might end up next to her." June gave a thin smile. "Then you better push smart. Not loud. Quiet enough to cut deep before they know they're bleeding." The next day, Caleb took Scout for a patrol out by the river bend. Partly routine, partly excuse. The air smelled of mud and pine, cicadas screaming like static in trees. Scout tugged hard toward a trail Caleb hadn't walked in years, one that led to the old quarry. The quarry had been abandoned since the late 90s, after a dynamite mishap left 3 workers buried under rock. Kids still dared each other to sneak in at night, but mostly it lay forgotten, filled with rainwater and broken machinery. Scout pulled harder, barking now, until they reached a rusted shipping container near the tree lean. Caleb's stomach sank. The door hung open. Inside, the stench hit like a wall, rot, oil mold. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting across piles of discarded trash bags. Except one of them moved. Caleb froze. Then a muffled whimper broke the silence. Jesus. He dropped to one knee, tearing at the duct tape, sealing the bag. Inside was not a body, but a girl. 16, maybe 17. Eyes wide, lips cracked from dehydration. She flinched at his touch, whispering hoarsely, "Don't let him find me." Caleb's heart thundered. "You're safe. You're safe now." But Scout's growl told him otherwise. The shepherd's gaze was fixed on the woods behind them, teeth bared. Caleb followed the stare. Between the trees, a shadow shifted, watching, and then it slipped away, silent as smoke. Back at the station, the girl refused to give a name, shaking her head violently when Caleb pressed. She clung to Scout like a lifeline, burying her fingers in his fur. Donnelly stormed in minutes later, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" Caleb stood his ground. "Found her at the quarry. Bag, taped, alive. She's a runaway. You know what this town's full of? Kids who don't want to be found." She was dumped in a container like trash. Donnelly leaned close, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You want to play Hero Rourke? Fine, but heroes get buried faster than villains in Harrow's End. You remember that." Caleb's fists clenched. For the first time, he wanted to swing, to break the smug mask off Donnelly's face. But the girl's trembling grip on Scout anchored him. Instead, he said evenly, "I'll file the report." Donnelly's lip curled. "Do that, and pray no one reads it." That night, Caleb returned home, nerves buzzing. He poured himself a whiskey, but didn't drink it, just stared into the glass. Scout paced the floor, restless as ever. On the table lay Lily's notebook, the photograph, the note, the bracelet, and now, the memory of the terrified girl, pieces of a puzzle no one in town wanted solved. But someone was watching, someone powerful enough to silence. And as Caleb sat in the half-dark, Scout suddenly lifted his head and growled again, low warning. Caleb's skin prickled. Through the window, across the street, a figure stood under the broken street lamp, not moving, just watching. The figure beneath the street lamp didn't move, just stood there, a silhouette arms loose at its sides. Caleb froze, breath caught halfway in his chest. Scout growled so deep it rattled the floorboards. Caleb's instincts screamed for action. He yanked his Glock from the holster and moved toward the door. The moment the hinges groaned, the figure turned and slipped into the dark like mist dispersing. Caleb sprinted out, Scout bounding ahead, paws kicking up gravel. But by the time they reached the corner, the street was empty, only the faint hum of cicadas and the flicker of the dead bulb above. Whoever it was, they wanted him rattled, and they'd succeeded. Morning brought no comfort. The girl they'd found in the quarry was gone. Caleb stormed into the station, Scout at his side, boots striking the linoleum like gunshots. Where is she? Deputy Harlan, a stocky man with nervous eyes, stammered behind the desk. Sheriff said county services took her early this morning. No paperwork, no signatures. Harlan's Adam's apple bobbed. He handled it himself. Caleb cursed under his breath. Donnelly had her, or worse, had delivered her. He gripped the counter so hard the wood creaked. You ever lose sleep at night, Harlan? Ever wonder if the badge on your chest still means something? Harlan's gaze fell. He said nothing. Caleb turned sharply and walked out, Scout pacing hot at his side. June's apartment smelled of stale coffee and cigarettes when he barged in unannounced. She sat hunched over her desk, circles under her eyes, ink smudged on her fingers. You look like hell, she muttered. So, do you... He dropped into the chair opposite. They took her. The girl. Donnelly covered it. June's pen clattered to the desk. She didn't look surprised, only resigned. You knew this was coming. He's done it before. Done what? She leaned back, rubbing her temples, burying stories, evidence, people. You think Lily Tanner was the first? This town runs on silence, Caleb. Donnelly just makes sure no one ever hears the screaming. Caleb's chest tightened. You're saying everyone knows. Not everyone, she said softly, but enough. Enough to keep you outnumbered. He stared at her, realization dawning. You knew. About Lily. About all of it. June's eyes glistened, but her voice was hard. I tried to print it. 10 years ago. Guess who killed the story before it went to press? My own editor. Said the sheriff was too powerful, that it'd ruin families. I had a choice, stay quiet or lose everything. I stayed quiet. The silence between them stretched taut. Caleb's respect for her fractured, though part of him understood the survival instinct, the compromise that left people living but hollow. Still, it burned. You should have told me, he said finally. June's jaw tightened. And what? You have charge and guns blazing back then? You'd be in the ground, and Lily's name still forgotten. Her voice cracked, anger laced with regret. Maybe now you'll actually finish what I couldn't. That night, Caleb drove to the Wyatt farm again. Scout whined in the passenger seat, restless, sensing the storm brewing in his handler's chest. The field stretched wide under the moonlight, silvering the weeds. The farmhouse leaned crooked against the horizon, windows like black eyes. Caleb parked and stepped out, hand on his pistol. Scout darted forward, nose to the dirt, tail stiff. The dog led him past the fence line, to another patch of ground disturbed by digging. Caleb's stomach clenched as he dropped to his knees and clawed at the soil with his hands. The earth gave way to cloth. Not a box this time, but a tarp. He peeled it back. Inside lay bones. Small, fragile, too small for Lily. His breath hitched. His pulse roared in his ears. These weren't the remains of a teenager. These were the remains of a child. Scout barked sharply, snapping Caleb from the horror. A flashlight beam cut through the dark. Sheriff Donnelly stepped in the shadows, revolver drawn, his hat low, his expression unreadable. I told you to leave it alone. Caleb rose slowly, mud caked on his palms. How many, Donnelly? His voice was raw. How many kids did you bury to keep your kingdom clean? The sheriff's lips curled in something between a sneer and a smile. You think you're the first deputy with a conscience? You won't be the last, but you'll end up the same. Scout snarled, teeth bared. Donnelly leveled his revolver. Leash your dog. Caleb's mind raced. He wasn't faster than a bullet, and Donnelly knew it. But Scout didn't care about bullets. Not this time, Caleb whispered. Scout lunged. The gunshot cracked across the field, echoed off the hollow farmhouse walls. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Donnelly crumpled, the revolver clattering to the dirt. Scout stood over him, growling, blood on his muzzle that wasn't his own. Caleb's hand shook as he kicked the gun away and pressed a knee to the sheriff's chest. Donnelly gasped, blood bubbling from his lips, eyes glassy with hate. "You don't know what you've done," he rasped. "This town, this whole damn county, runs because I keep it running. Without me, it rots." Caleb leaned closer, then let it rot. Donnelly's breath rattled once more, then stopped. The aftermath was chaos. The state police swarmed Harrow's End within hours, drawn by Caleb's urgent call and the unignorable scene at the Wyatt farm. They unearthed more tarps, more bones. The town that prided itself on quiet couldn't stay quiet anymore. Headlines spread like wildfire, Sheriff's dark legacy exposed. Harrow's End built on secrets. June printed every word, her byline finally attached to the truth she'd carried for years. Deputy Harlan resigned. Half the department scattered like cockroaches when the lights came on. Others came forward, whispering confessions they should have made a decade ago. And the girl from the quarry? She vanished again. State police searched, but Caleb knew she'd run. Like a deer who'd tasted freedom once and wouldn't risk the snare again. Sometimes survival meant disappearing. He understood that now. Weeks later, Caleb sat on his porch as the sun bled red over the horizon. The town was quieter than usual, its gossip replaced by stunned silence. Scout lay at his feet, head resting heavy on Caleb's boot, eyes half closed. Caleb sipped from a bottle, not whiskey this time, just water. His hands no longer shook. The scars of Harrow's End wouldn't heal fast. Maybe not ever. But for the first time in years, the air felt honest. He reached down, scratching behind Scout's ears. "You did good, boy. Better than all of us." The shepherd gave a tired huff, tail thumping once against the porch boards. Caleb leaned back in the chair, eyes on the dying light. No grand speeches. No medals. Just the quiet weight of truth finally unburied. And the knowledge that sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is refuse to stay silent.